Hello and welcome to a new episode of our podcast BeyondCore, the podcast for business leaders who dare to think beyond today's success and build the future. And as you know, in every episode, we explore entrepreneurial strategies for unlocking new growth beyond your core business. Could be platforms, digital ecosystems, AI-driven ventures, or circular business models. We dive deep with industry pioneers who are shaping what's next. If you are looking to scale innovation, create new markets, and future-proof your company, you're in the right place. So let's go beyond the core and build what's next. And welcome to our today's episode. And I'm really happy to have a great guest with me. I come to that in a second. But before we go into the topic, I want to share with you a personal thing. Maybe you can see it's a bicycle helmet. It's my bicycle helmet. I love to drive and to ride mountain bikes. And some years ago, I went to a big cycling event close to here in the Czech Republic. And I met my favorite mountain biker, Nino Schurter. And I was lucky enough to get an autograph from him. So the helmet brings me hopefully a bit of luck when I ride the bike. And so the topic of today is also about cycling. And we talk about ecosystem strategies in the cycling industries. And one of the biggest companies in the cycling industry is SRAM. SRAM is a leading American manufacturer of high-performance bicycle components. A bit old, let's say this way. They were founded in 1987 and are headquartered in Chicago, Illinois, so in America. But they have grown into one of the most influential brands in the cycling industry, competing with companies like Shimano, Campagnola, etc. And they are known for their innovative drivetrain systems, electronic shifting, and their ecosystem-driven approach to cycling technology. And so I'm really honored to introduce to you James Meyer. Hello, James.
Hello, glad to be here.
James is the head of the ecosystem strategy at SRAM with the Access ecosystem, but he will talk a bit more about what is Access, what is the ecosystem strategy, and what makes it so unique compared to all the other competitors out there. So welcome, James, to the podcast. And maybe we start first with a short intro about yourself. So maybe give you a bit of a background, who you are, where you are from, what have you done so far, and what you are doing at SRAM.
Yeah, I'm happy to be here. I love to talk about SRAM and ecosystems. I've been a lifelong cyclist. I did a little bit of swimming competitively in high school, which led to triathlon, and of course was in and around just shortly after the birth of mountain biking in the early '80s, the bicycles really drove my love of building things and science and engineering, and led me to engineering school, and then a little bit after into my early career. I started building a power meter company called Quarq to build power meters for bicycles, and that was really what launched my career in the true bicycle industry.
Yeah, and I have also a Quarq Powermeter on my bike. It really helps a lot to understand how much power you put into your bike. But how have it come that you joined SRAM and you became kind of responsible for the ecosystem strategy at SRAM?
Right. So I formed Quarq in 2006. And then we were acquired by SRAM in 2011, and that was right at the birth of electronic shifting on bicycles. So, for those of the audience here that isn't familiar with bicycle technology, we've all ridden back in the day the 10-speed bicycles, where you've got levers that pull cable and that shifts the gears. Now that's all driven by a wireless protocol. So it's a push of a button, and then a servo motor moves the derailleur back and forth, which makes the gears shift. Those just started becoming available by some of SRAM's competitors in 2008. And so when I joined SRAM in 2011 with our power meter company, we were just beginning into the development of our first electronic shifting system called ETAP. And so it was really my participation in SRAM through the power meters and through the birth of ETAP that set up where we are with our ecosystem strategy and the access ecosystem today.
So maybe you can also give a bit more of an overview what the access ecosystem is today. So you talked about the origins with the ETAP, etc., but maybe also for our listeners that they understood when we talk about access, what is the access product ecosystem? So maybe you can give a bit of an overview.
Yeah, and we can think about that through your hero Nino. Nino is one of our athletes and kind of the winning most mountain biker in history. With I think what is it, 10 world championships, or it's a lot. And so when you go to Nino's race bike today, you'll actually find that there's a lot of electronics on it. So the rear derailleur with the shifting is driven electronically with wireless buttons that control that. The saddle or seat post will go up and down electronically. So you can press a button, sit down, the seat goes down, and that helps you go over the rough terrain. And then particularly on Nino's bike, he has a product we call Flight Attendant, which is electronic suspension. And so that suspension will change its lockout state, up to like 1,000 times a lap to both be compliant and supple and fast over the rough parts of the course, but also rigid and efficient when Nino's putting the power through the pedals. And so that whole ecosystem, all those components are part of the same wireless network. A lot of the data is captured by a GPS, and then all that can be analyzed after the race or ride. And so that's not just for Nino and the elite of the world, but that's the flagship bicycles that every consumer can buy. That's what's one of the fun things about the bicycle ecosystem and the bicycle industry is Nino's race bike that he raced at the Olympics. You can go to a store and buy all the same parts that he was on.
So it's basically what we call, in a business term, a functional integrated ecosystem. So you have multiple components, and they are working together in a kind of a seamless experience for the user. In your case, it's about cycling. So the rider of the bike, he don't have to care about the suspension or whatever, but he more can really focus on riding and less on all the other, let's say, details of with the suspension or with the seat post and stuff like that. So you can really rely on the electronics supporting them. And and also Quarq, your ecosystem is the app. It's an application on your phone where you can control everything, where you can do all the settings, setups, etc.
Yeah, and it's a good example of how to think about kind of the boundaries of the ecosystems and how they work. What you said on Nino's bike is exactly correct. Before he had the Flight Attendant suspension system, there was a lever on the handlebar that actually had 3 positions that Nino would have to move with his thumb throughout the race course. And so that's something that as a rider, you're managing the position of your suspension system. And when you get to Flight Attendant, that activity goes away entirely. The complexity on the bike is gone. That lever isn't there anymore. But more importantly, the complexity in your mind isn't there. You no longer have to think about managing that part of the bicycle, and you can think about racing the race you're in for Nino or just enjoying the ride for everyone else. That's like the components talking together, and it turns out the power meter is an important part of Flight Attendant. How hard you're pedaling helps the suspension decide what to do. That's ecosystem of components within the SRAM world. Like SRAM makes all of those components. When you think about power meters and power training, SRAM and Quarq, we build the power meter itself. So that's the part of the bicycle that's doing the measuring in watts how hard you're pedaling. the experience of ingesting that data actually connects to a couple of other ecosystems. One of them is Strava, which is an online social network, not our product, but a lot of riders, or in fact, most riders now, competitively, when you do your ride, you upload it to Strava. The power data comes along with that. And so Strava is an important part of the power meter ecosystem and the experience of that product. In addition, there's now indoor training with, kind of one of the leading companies there is called Zwift. Zwift's been around for about 10 years now. You can go ride your bikes online with other riders. And one of the things that we found was that through the increasing popularity of Zwift, which got everyone riding inside, that required a power meter. That's how you can race up the hills with your friends on different continents, is because the power meters are measuring how hard you're pedaling. And a lot of people were exposed to power meters first through Zwift, and then wanted to take that experience outside and began to demand power meters on basically all of their bikes when they're riding outdoors. And so I think it's a good example of how to think about the ecosystem, one within our product environment of access, but also how our products interact with ecosystems that are industry-wide and not strictly inside the SRAM organization.
Yeah, so it's also connecting to the network effects of other platforms like Strava or Swift and so on, and integrate them. So also not just being a closed product ecosystem with your own products, but also being open and connected to other networks and other kind of platforms, ecosystems.
Yeah, exactly.
Most of our listeners are also asking themselves how to start, how to build an ecosystem. So when you joined, you said, yes, there was a bit of an early technology there with ETAP, etc. But how have you formed the vision of access? Was it on the go, or was the vision there already some years ago, and now you're executing? So what was the origin of the vision of the access ecosystem?
Yeah, it was really making it a long story simple. I think there was really kind of two steps to it. First was seeing the development of electronic shifting. And we saw some competitors do the electronic shifting. And our first system, ETAP, in 2016, was our first go at building electronic shifting in our components. And that was a big deal because prior to ETAP, we didn't have electrical engineering at SRAM. There was no one writing code at SRAM for deployment into an actual commercial product. All the products were mechanical. So the first step just to get to ETAP was quite a journey organizationally. There was an entirely new set of skills, an entirely new set of vendors, a new set of problems to solve and technologies to apply just to get us to market with ETAP. And of course, when we think about the success of ETAP, at the end of the day, ETAP wasn't part of a broad ecosystem. It was a more kind of conservative application of here's the bike, we're going to take this cable away and replace it with electronics. And I think one of the key things that we discovered there is that and this is kind of a specific rider thing, when you have a mechanical shifting, your finger has to follow through, and it's getting feedback of like what the cable is doing. You can kind of feel the chain moving, all of that. And it turns out that there's kind of a learning curve and a technique sensitivity to that. And then, of course, if your hands get cold or the cable gets muddy, that experience and the reliability of creating a shift that way degrades pretty quickly. When you move to electronics, all that becomes instantaneous. It's a switch. You click the button. We actually did a ton of engineering into the literal feel of the button, and you click, and kind of famously on the internet, it goes beep boop, and the gear changes. I kind of describe all that because that was actually the first really truly key important thing that we learned that was a key step in building the ecosystem. if we were going to build an ecosystem electronically on the bike, you needed that first use case, like the true killer app, to get that electronics onto the bike. And for us, understanding that bikes they're supposed to be simple and joyful, and like an elegant technical solution. And it's kind of, why on earth would you go put batteries and radios and all of this onto the bike and make all this complexity when a bicycle is trying to be simple? Well, it turns out that the experience of electronic shifting, it's joyful and simpler and better. And that was what really got us started. And once we hit with ETAP and we all wrote it, we all became believers, the market was buying it, and we got the traction, then the next step was actually very obvious. It was like, okay, we built ETAP for road bikes. Now let's build another ETAP for road bikes. Let's build ETAP for mountain bikes. Let's also do the suspension system and the seat post. And we could the whole pathway became clear immediately after the ETAP project. And then that was the next step to get to what we call Axis, which is truly the ecosystem. And that was just 3 years later in 2019.
Yeah, I think this is as well two things. First, I can totally confirm this. When the first time I used the electronic shifting and it made toot, 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 it was different to this with the manual shifting. And it's also a very fantastic experience, very smooth and easy. And but the other thing is, I think maybe more important for our listeners. I mean, you also said that you have been kind of raised in an entrepreneurial family. And so I think this entrepreneurial understanding and what you explained with finding the one killer application to launch a product, this is, how have you found this out? Was it your entrepreneurial instinct, or was it a bit of research, talking to writers, or how have you decided on this is the killer feature we want to launch first, and all the other ones we put second and third?
Yeah, it's certainly built into the DNA of SRAM and the people that work at SRAM, but it also came from my background. I grew up, my father had started a company to build dental vacuum equipment, of all things. He was a dentist and built a dental vacuum pump that didn't consume water. And so I grew up kind of in the environment of thinking about, why are things the way they are? How can they be different? And you realize that, the world is changing all the time, and that if you understand the problems that exist in the world, and then you can go find the better solution and not create other problems along the way, that's the path forward. And of course, whether it's, in some B2B businesses or other businesses, you really need to do a lot of work to embed yourself in the understanding or the context of the businesses you're trying to solve for, so you really understand those problems. In the cycling industry, we have the advantage of most of the product leaders at SRAM are cyclists, very intensely in one way, shape, or form. So we've all been, embedded in the cycling industry for a long time. I grew up, working in a bike shop and was a bike mechanic for a long time, was always working on my own bicycles. And so with that, and then being able to take that kind of that learned experience and that instinct and put it together with real rational observation of what other people do, because there's a danger in becoming too insular. You're your own expert, and then you shut out the rest of the world. And of course, for the innovation, you need a bit of both, because if you follow all the existing product patterns and market patterns, you won't do anything new. So finding that mix and that balance is really what's key.
Yeah, it's also what we say to most of the corporate companies we work with. I mean, you have all the market knowledge because you are in the market for years, so you know all about the market. There are no more experts than you. So listen to your own employees, to your own staff, what they have learned, what they have observed, and take this as a great input. Yep. So you started with the ecosystem, with the shifting, and how have you then moved on to further scale the line, and what was the strategy then? I mean, you said we started with the ETAP for road bikes, and we went to the ETAP for the mountain bikes. So it's another classification of bikes. But how have you further scaled your ecosystem?
Yeah, so we one applied the electronics and the Axis ecosystem and that kind of delightful electronic experience of riding the bike. And we applied that across our product lines first at the high end. That was very, all the flagship products. And then we started working at bringing that performance to the lower price points. And so we've got a lot more depth in our product line from our high-end flagship products to the more entry-level products of SRAM, which, we're a pretty high-end company. So the most inexpensive bikes that will come on is like a $2,000 bike, and with the electronic systems. So we ended up going in depth down the product line, but we maintained compatibility across everything, and that I think has been very, very important because it allows a bit of mix and match across the product lines. And what we've seen is folks start to use mountain bike drivetrains. So the big wide range gears for climbing big mountains, along with the shift lever setups that are literally used in the Tour de France, and people can kind of mix and match those bikes together into what us Americans call the mullet build off the haircut, and that's been really powerful to see how the market and consumers and riders will end up applying their own creativity to the products. And then there's a few other places that we explore with the electronics and really excited about where these will go in the future. We ended up buying a Kickstarter project at one point called Shockwiz, and that's an electronic suspension tuning product that helps a rider set up their suspension. So that's different than Flight Attendant, which is part of the riding. Shockwiz is part of the tuning experience. And then we're working with tire pressure sensors as well to sense tire pressure. And we've have a few iterations of that product. And then finally, in about 3 years ago, we acquired a company called Hammerhead that builds cycling computers, so GPS-enabled cycling computers. And that, of course, can connect to the data to all the products. And the Hammerhead devices, we also started a new kind of part of the ecosystem. We have extensions on Hammerhead. Hammerhead's an Android-based platform, and so we're allowing third-party developers to write their own applications that can run on the Hammerhead device. And so altogether, there's not only the core Axis ecosystem that's really driving a lot of our business today, but we have a lot of other peripheral parts of the ecosystem that we know are elements of our product portfolio now, but we expect those to really grow that web of interconnections and those delightful experiences for the riders, and we expect that'll further integrate over time.
Yeah, it's another connection point also to other platforms, networks, right?
Yes.
So for when I use the Hammerhead and I do route planning, maybe rely on the routes and recommendations from others. There are also other platforms out there like Promote or whatever, or I use Strava. So for me, it's also following an observation we made when we looked at different kind of platforms and how they have scaled over the course of the years. Then they are following this principle or kind of a framework we developed. It's called the platform value stack, and there's basically 3 layers. The top layer is the engagement layer, the middle layer is the intelligence layer, and the bottom layer is the infrastructure layer. And very often the kind of digital platforms, marketplaces, they start at the top. They have the engagement, they have the buyer sellers coming together like Strava or whatever, but then they invest further into intelligence like recommendation engines or whatever, or AI-driven things. They rely on the data, and then they continue to invest into infrastructure. And traditional companies, maybe like SRAM, they go from bottom to the top. So you have the infrastructure, you have the components. Now you develop the electronic things with the data, and now you have flight attendant, you have, and so on. And now you are climbing further up the framework or the layers, and now you're connecting to existing ecosystems like Strava, etc. So becoming more open. So it follows also this bottom to the top kind of strategy. And question for me is, how is the partner strategy playing an important role for the future of your growth plans for SRAM and the ecosystem?
Yeah, it really is. I like the thought about those layers and really the strategy of moving between the layers, because we see ourselves at the engagement layer with ETAP, that delightful experience of pressing that button. That's what got us started, and that led us to that engagement drove us into a bit of the intelligence and then the infrastructure, which then, even if some of it's just a pure organizational infrastructure of having software developers and electrical engineers and tests and all of that. And then that lets us work back up to new engagement experiences. And the cycle can be kind of continue where we're moving up and down that stack back and forth and building our capabilities. And as you mentioned with the partners, like the partners have to come along on that journey with us. The Axis ecosystem that we have today, there's elements that could absolutely exist just within SRAM, but there's other parts of it that wouldn't exist without partners. I think one of the most clear examples of this is when I started Quarq back in 2006. I started building the power meter itself and a bicycle computer to go with that power meter. Because at the time, the industry standard of what we call AMP+, it was actually a precursor to BLE or Bluetooth Low Energy. That didn't even exist in 2006. And of course, the iPhone wasn't out. Like I remember watching the launch of the iPhone as when we were in startup mode. And we got a call from Garmin, and of course, Garmin, big company, they were aware of our project because we had been teasing it online in small bits. And they asked if as Quarq and doing a startup, if we would want to have our power meter send data over this AMP+ protocol up to Garmin head units. And I immediately said yes, because at the time, we're bootstrapping a startup together. And we were going to have to build two things, a power meter and a head unit. And the head unit or the bicycle computer has a lot of other needs that drive that experience and a lot of other needs that need to be fulfilled in order to make a successful head unit. And once the AMP+ system came out, we didn't have to solve those problems immediately. We could just focus on the power meter. And that was super helpful. And of course, in hindsight, I realized oh, wow, we would have not made it. We would have failed if we had to build a power meter and a head unit at the same time. And so being able to rely on that partner was very important. And of course, that continues to this day. The power meters work with Garmin and Wahoo and Hammerhead, where the industry's in a really good place with interchangeability of data across power meters. But then even as SRAM doesn't make bicycles. SRAM, we make bicycle components. And then our primary customer is actually the OE bicycle manufacturers, Trek, Specialized, Canyon, etc. And so those bicycle manufacturers choose SRAM components, and we help them get those components onto those bikes, and then that creates the riding experience. So all of SRAM is 100% dependent on our partnership, both with the bike companies and of course dealers and other partners within the software and digital platform world.
So this is there's also this partnership strategy called venture clienting, where a big company is partnering with a startup. So you benefited from that in the past, at the beginning, as you said, with the partnership with Garmin. as
Yep.
they found you and started to collaborate with you. So you benefited from their strategy in kind of searching for innovative products. And now you're doing the same, as you said, with we looked at Kickstarter projects and bought them and integrate them. So you're also now a bigger company, and now you are also benefiting from partnering with smaller companies. But I think also another great move you made is about the UDH. We're not called about the UDH. So the universal derailleur hanger thing. It's also kind of a, or the derailleur hanger is also a kind of a nightmare for for the riders. So it was always very unique for each bike. But now you're creating a kind of a standard, or you established a standard for that. Maybe you can also talk about this move, because it's a lot of companies we talk to, they also think about, when we now go to the market and we create something cool, we should build a standard right away, right at the beginning. But for you, it was more like it's now the step to build a standard. But first, you went to the market with a very killer product. You gained tractions. You found fans for your product, etc. Then you grow, and now the creating a standard becomes part of your strategy. At least it looks like for me. Maybe you can give us a bit more insights on what is behind this UDH thing, and how is it part of the strategy?
Yeah. Well, and you know, recognize it's a podcast. We can't show the parts in front of us, so I'll describe it a little bit. You know, backing up, like, bicycles are kind of a unique thing, because there's lots of bike companies, there's lots of companies making bicycle components, and there's kind of a cultural expectation, or like a customer expectation, that many of the parts will be interchangeable. So, you know, it's almost like bicycles are a bit like a Lego set. A lot of riders are expecting to be able to put these wheels on that bike, or this saddle over here, or this tape, or these shifting systems from bike to bike. So there's always been an expectation that the parts are interchangeable to some extent. Some of that interchangeability is guided by standards. But then other parts of that interchangeability is just de facto. It's just a pure background side effect of building bikes for a long time. So when we think about innovating with some of our new products, if we want to change something, we actually need to get all of our bicycle or all those OE brands, all of our customers, to change something at the same time. Some of them may not actually be our customer, but we want to kind of impart change on everything. So this particular example, you know, for everyone listening, you think about the rear of the bike and their derailleur, and you know, you're shifting gears, and you got these little pulleys, and everything needs to line up together. And for, you know, decades and decades, that was accomplished through the derailleur, which attached the bike through the derailleur hanger. And if that hanger got bent, all your shifting was bad. And of course, if you break the derailleur hanger off the bike entirely, then you ruin the entire bicycle. And so it was probably about 20 or so years ago, those derailleur hangers became replaceable, so that you wouldn't break your whole bike when you bent it. But then that meant that every bike manufacturer had a different derailleur hanger, and there's literally hundreds of them. And if you're on a trip and you break it, good luck going to a bike shop and them having the exact one that you want. So it turns out there's a ton of customer problems in there. You know, you can bend this thing, it's brittle, it's hard to replace, all of that. You know, we knew that we had a technical solution of structurally changing the derailleur itself to mount in a far more robust way that was stronger, more rigid. You can dump the bike over, you can jump on it. You're not going to bend this thing anymore. And it actually allowed us to take a couple of adjustment screws entirely off. There's some adjustment that was no longer needed at all. And so we knew we had some product innovation there that was going to be very, very powerful. And we're looking for, like, okay, now we know we have our innovation, but we need to figure out how to get the market to allow us to deploy that innovation. Like, what are we going to do to get all the bikes in the world to change to allow us to apply our innovation? The answer was what we call UDH, the Universal Derailleur Hanger, where we established a standard of a single new rear derailleur hanger that would apply to all bikes and would solve this other customer problem of you bend your derailleur hanger and there's 200 of them and no shop has them in stock. It also solves our OE customer problem of having to redesign this derailleur hanger for each bike, which is also waste and overhead that they don't want. And so we started by introducing the universal derailleur hanger first on its own merits. We didn't have our product improvement to market at time. We started with the universal derailleur hanger a couple years ahead. And we really did think about that as its own product and making an improvement to the bicycle industry, regardless of whether we came to market with our product or not. Like, you really have to kind of separate that out and really make sure that we're doing something valuable for everyone. And then, of course, we established that standard that it was open enough that everyone could adopt it at no charge. And it was also compatible with our competitors' products because we knew if we were trying to create something proprietary to box out competitors, that was actually going to prevent us from getting the market change or that bicycle change that we were looking for. So it was very much a two-step process. One with the innovation for the whole market that was given away for free and valuable to everyone, including our competitors. And then the second move, which built upon that, where once we had created that new interface standard, we were able to build our product that had its own its own performance improvements.
And it also shows that when you build up an ecosystem, of course, you can try to design it to create a lock-in effect for your products. If you would have created this UDH only compatible with your products, then it would create, of course, would be a huge benefit with the lock-in effect. So customers could not use anything else. But on the other side, also it would be a negative effect for the chains, as you said. So you need to find the right balance. So being more like open for the ecosystem versus creating lock-in effect. And so maybe the benefits of being more open has in general more in total more benefits for you as a company versus creating those lock-in effects and trying to prevent others to steal. So being more open has also a huge advantage.
Yeah, and it's when we think about the strategy of these things, it's not one answer. For very much, like we really wanted and knew that UDH, or the Universal Derailleur Hanger, needed to be very open. Like that was what was required for success there. On other parts of our ecosystem, we do stay within our own product family. For example, the way the button configuration works across our wireless components, a lot of the way the control of the important parts of the bicycle, the shifting, the seat post, all of that, we want to be very careful about how we do that because the wireless performance, the speed and security of that connection is very important. We care a lot about the shifting feel of those parts of our system, and so we're far more kind of closed around that parts of the ecosystem there. But we also know that there's still buttons that people want to push to do other things. And so it's a pretty good example because on our latest road component group set, we've got a few buttons that are third-party interoperable with other devices in the ecosystem. And so we're very deliberate about which of the parts where are we going to control the experience and make sure that we have the performance that we demand, and then which parts of the times and places to create that openness so that everything works together.
Yeah. So also now, I mean, you started some years ago with this whole strategy and the execution, and now you're really kind of seeing the full traction in the market with the huge bandwidth of the whole portfolio for all kinds of bikes, etc. So maybe looking into the future, how do you see your ecosystem around access evolve into the next years? When you look forward into the next 5-10 years, I mean, we have the huge movement of e-bikes. I think last year, there were more e-bikes sold than bio bikes. So how do you see the future of the cycling industry, and also how do you see your ecosystem strategy evolve in the next year?
Yeah, I think e-bikes are important to us. We just launched our first e-bike about a year ago, a little over a year ago, and so that's exciting, and that'll be a whole new space for us to get into. So we're excited about that. For me, like, I really think about the simplicity and making sure that we're bringing the joy and ease of use back to bicycles. We've got or continue to make it simpler. We talk about in here from a design standpoint, when you invent the ship, you invent the shipwreck. And when you put a battery on the bike, you just introduce the chance to have a dead battery on a bike. And so it's all those user experience things where we need to just make sure that it becomes simpler and simpler and simpler. And that's really the goal, is to make the complexity disappear from the user experience and make everything very easy to work on, very easy to live with, very natural to interact with. I think that the simplicity is really the driver of everything. And of course, it kind of goes back to the Einstein quote, any intelligent fool can make something bigger, more complex, more violent, but it takes the courage to move the other direction. We like to think that we're courageous. We also know that our riders demand it. If any time that we've shipped anything that's tedious or annoying to work with, we instantly know it. Like people, by the time you're going to ride your bike, you're done with your job, you're escaping the house for a little bit. Like, you want that really to be, your time to enjoy the outside or nature, all that. And you don't really want to be getting into like some sort of science project with an app and a battery and something else. And so we know that the simplicity is really going to be the driver of everything. And then, of course, as we dream and think more, you talked about the middle layer, that ecosystem. I'm pretty excited about where the intelligence can go. AI, of course, the buzzword, but it does beg the question of where are the places where we can just truly be a lot smarter about the way things operate, and what could come of that, and how could we deploy that in a way that goes back to that joy and simplicity of a bicycle.
This is also what I thought when I learned more about the flight attendant system. I mean, you collected thousands of data points throughout the ride, and then you analyze it, and instantly you can make the right setting for the suspension, for example. So this is also a bit of a learning, or also adopting to the style of how you ride and prepare, etc. So this is the topic of intelligence, bring the intelligence. But I'm totally with you. This kind of creating this very simple thing, make it very simple and seamless, integrated. I think this is the key for all building successful ecosystems. James, thank you very much for talking about the whole strategy behind SRAM's access ecosystem. I think it's a fantastic example. Every leader should have a look at the topic and how you have built it. So I also recommend everybody who is listening here to maybe reach out to you. I hope you are fine with that. But people can connect to you via LinkedIn. I would say easily connect to you, and then maybe you can start exchanging. But it's really a great example, and I totally recommend people to have a closer look. I mean, it's a bit technical to understand first if you're not riding a bike, but after 5 minutes you have you have understood what is a derailleur, what is a UDH, and what is suspension or whatever. But if you got it, then you understand how everything is really integrated, and that's a perfect example. So thank you very much for joining. Maybe as a final question, we always ask our guests if there are any recommendations from your side for our listeners, what you think they should, or maybe what helped you to learn more about the topic or other leadership topics. So is there any book, any podcast, any other thing you would like to recommend to leaders?
Yeah, I've got two of them. So one of them is on the simpler side and the kind of the business side, which is building a story brand. And so that's with Don Miller, was the creator of that. And it's just a simple storytelling framework. And I think about the story brand framework, and it's a description of the hero's journey, and that's great. One, for your marketing, but also just for internal discussions, making internal presentations, anything where you're persuading people. Just really starting to frame how you're thinking about, how you're packaging the information and communicating it. So the story brand book, I think, is a great framework. The other one, which is just a joyful thing. My favorite podcast is 99% Invisible with Roman Mars. Can't recommend it enough. But in particular, last year, they did a 12-part series on The Power Broker, which is a book written by Robert Caro in 1975. The book is about Robert Moses, who is the director of parks in New York City from, I think it was 1930 through the late 50s. Incredible book, incredible 12-part series about the book, but it really talks about systems and how the decisions that you make have such lasting impacts. And so for anyone like in that kind of that big picture thinking about the systems, and it's just a joyful, fun thing to listen to, can't recommend it enough. So that's the Power Broker series on the 99% Invisible podcast.
Okay, very good. I never heard about that, but I will also tune in, and I will put this into the show notes here so that everybody can see a link to the podcast, maybe also the book, etc. And maybe before we close, a final question from my side. What is your prediction for the 2025 mountain bike UCI World Championship? Is Nino Schurter succeeding again, or do you think someone else? Last year we have seen Alan Heatherly. What is your prediction?
It'll be interesting. We will find out, but my prediction is that it will be won on SRAM.
Okay. Okay. If not, then but maybe in end of the year we can have another conversation about that, and let's see. High likely that it will be. Also Specialized was very dominant last year.
Yeah.
Last season. So thank you very much for joining. It was a pleasure for me, and I hope you enjoyed it too. And see you soon.
Yeah, it was great to be here. Thank you.